I don't care what the policy is, I am getting on that plane right now.
Ma'am, I cannot let you board without the proper authorization.
The night Ethan Cole flew a $40 million private jet through a Category 4 storm, he had exactly 12 minutes of fuel left, zero visibility, and a CEO who'd spent 2 years treating him like he was invisible. But that's not where this story begins. It begins in a hangar in Chicago, with laughter, cruel, cutting laughter, echoing off million-dollar aircraft while a single father in a janitor's uniform stood perfectly still, fists clenched, knowing that one day they'd all see what he really was. Stay with me until the end of this story, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this journey travels. The fluorescent lights of Whitmore Aviation's private hangar hummed with that particular frequency that gets inside your skull and stays there. Ethan Cole had learned to tune it out over the past 2 years, the same way he'd learned to tune out a lot of things. The hum, the cold, the way people's eyes slid right past him like he was part of the equipment. It was 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in late October, and Ethan was on his knees scrubbing hydraulic fluid off the polished concrete floor near Gate 3. The stain was 3 days old. Someone had been sloppy during a maintenance check, and it had set into the sealant like a scar. He worked the brush in small, methodical circles, the muscles in his forearms moving with the kind of efficiency that came from repetition, from 2 years of invisible labor. Above him, sleek private jets sat in their designated spaces like sleeping predators. A Gulfstream G650. 2 Bombardier Global 7005s. A brand new Dassault Falcon 8X that still had that new plane smell, all leather and money. Ethan didn't look up at them anymore. Looking up made things harder. "Morning, Ethan." The voice belonged to Marcus Chen, one of the junior maintenance techs. "Good kid. 23, fresh out of technical school, still excited about working around aircraft." He was one of maybe 3 people in the entire facility who bothered to learn Ethan's name. "Morning, Marcus." Ethan's voice was quiet, economical. He didn't look up from the stain. "Man, that's a stubborn one. Want me to grab the industrial degreaser?" "Got it handled. Thanks, though." Marcus lingered for a moment, and Ethan could feel the question forming. It was always the same question, asked different ways, by the handful of people who treated him like a human being instead of a fixture. "You ever work on planes before this? Like, you seem to know your way around them pretty well." Ethan's hand paused for just a fraction of a second. "Picked up a few things," he said, resuming his scrubbing. "You better get moving. Hendricks doesn't like people standing around." "Right. Yeah. See you later, Ethan." The kid's footsteps faded across the hangar floor, and Ethan was alone again with the hum and the stain and the ghosts of what he used to be. He'd been working at Whitmore Aviation for exactly 2 years, 1 month, and 16 days. Night shift janitor, $16.50 an hour, no benefits until you hit the 2-year mark. He cleaned floors, emptied trash, scrubbed toilets, wiped down conference rooms. He moved through the facility like a shadow, arriving at 10 p.m. and leaving at 6 a.m., rarely crossing paths with the executives and pilots and clients who occupied the daylight hours. It was exactly what he needed: invisible, predictable, safe. The hangar door rolled open with a mechanical groan, and Ethan heard voices. Not unusual, the day shift started arriving around 7 a.m., but these voices had that particular pitch of excitement and nervousness that meant someone important had arrived. He kept scrubbing. "Is everything ready? I want the Falcon fueled and pre-flighted by 9. We have the Anderson party at 11, and they're paying premium for punctuality." Ethan recognized that voice. Everyone who worked at Whitmore Aviation recognized that voice. Claire Whitmore, CEO and owner, third-generation aviation legacy, Harvard MBA, 42 years old, and sharp as a blade made of ice and ambition. He'd seen her exactly 7 times in 2 years. She didn't acknowledge night shift staff. Why would she? "Yes, Ms. Whitmore. Captain Rodriguez has the Falcon on his pre-flight checklist now." That was Daniel Hendricks, operations manager, Claire's right hand and primary enforcer of the invisible hierarchy that kept people like Ethan in their place. "Good. And the Gulfstream needs a full interior detail before Friday. I don't care what it costs. Senator Mitchell's wife will inspect every square inch, and I will not have her finding so much as a coffee stain." "Already scheduled, Miss Whitmore." The voices moved closer. Ethan focused on his scrubbing, making himself smaller, more invisible. But the stain was right in their path, and there was nowhere to go without making it obvious he was trying to avoid them. "What's this?"
I don't care
Claire's
what
voice
the
cut
policy
through the
is,
air
I
like
am
a
getting on
scalpel.
that plane right now.
"Is that hydraulic
Ma'am.
fluid?"
I cannot
Ethan
let you
looked up.
board without the
He had
proper
to.
authorization.
It would have been more conspicuous not to. Claire Whitmore stood 6 feet away in a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than Ethan made in 3 months. Dark hair pulled back in a way that was simultaneously elegant and severe. Gray eyes that assessed and categorized and dismissed in the space of a heartbeat. She was looking at the stain, not at him. "Yes, ma'am," Hendricks said quickly. "Maintenance spill from Sunday. It's being addressed." "By when? We have clients walking through here every day, Daniel. This looks like a truck stop garage, not a luxury aviation facility." "It's being cleaned now, ma'am." Hendricks gestured vaguely in Ethan's direction, still not quite looking at him. Claire's eyes flickered to Ethan for the first time. He saw the calculation happen in real time. Janitor, night shift, irrelevant. Her gaze moved on. "See that it's finished within the hour. I'm bringing the Anderson party through for a facility tour, and I will not have them walking past industrial stains." She turned on her heel, already moving to the next crisis, the next detail, the next decision. Ethan exhaled slowly and returned to his work. But the morning was just beginning. By 8:15 a.m., the hangar had transformed from a quiet cathedral of metal and money into something alive and frantic. The Anderson party was arriving early, of course they were, and everyone was scrambling. Pilots checked and rechecked pre-flight sequences. Maintenance crews polished chrome that was already perfect. Administrative staff scurried between offices with tablets and clipboards. Ethan had finished with the hydraulic stain and moved on to his normal closing tasks, emptying the break room trash, wiping down the dispatch office counters, making sure everything was pristine for the day shift. He was counting down the minutes until 9 a.m. when he could clock out and drive home to Noah. Noah, 7 years old, second grade, currently staying with Mrs. Patterson next door because Dad worked nights, missing his front tooth, obsessed with dinosaurs. The entire reason Ethan got up every day and did this job and kept breathing. "Ethan!" Marcus appeared in the break room doorway, slightly out of breath. "Hendricks is looking for you. Something about the executive conference room." Ethan checked his watch. 8:47 a.m. 13 minutes until he could leave. "What about it?" "Didn't say. But he looked stressed. More stressed than usual, I mean." Ethan followed Marcus through the hangar to the administrative wing, where the conference room overlooked the main floor through floor-to-ceiling windows. It was the showpiece room, where Claire Whitmore closed deals and entertained clients, and reminded everyone who walked through those doors that they were in the presence of aviation royalty. Hendricks was waiting outside, face red, phone pressed to his ear. When he saw Ethan, He ended the call abruptly. The conference room, someone spilled coffee on the carpet, all over the carpet. We have VIP clients arriving in less than 45 minutes. Ethan nodded. I'll get the spot cleaner. Not spots. The entire eastern section. It's everywhere. I don't... Hendricks pressed his fingers against his temples. Just fix it, please. The conference room was worse than Hendricks described. Someone had knocked over what must have been an entire carafe of coffee, and it had spread across the cream-colored carpet like a brown cancer. Ethan assessed the damage with the practiced eye of someone who'd cleaned up worse. He retrieved his equipment from the maintenance closet, commercial spot cleaner, extraction vacuum, microfiber cloths, and got to work. The chemical smell of the cleaning solution mixed with the coffee. His knees ached from the morning's work, but he moved efficiently, methodically, racing against the clock. He was halfway through when he heard voices in the hallway, multiple voices, coming closer. And through here, you'll see our executive briefing room, where we can review flight plans, discuss custom routing, and ensure every detail of your travel experience meets your exact specifications. Claire Whitmore's voice. The tour. Early. Ethan looked at the carpet. Still wet. Still obviously stained in places. Still very much in progress. The door opened. Oh. Claire stopped in the doorway, 3 men in expensive suits behind her, all of them staring at Ethan kneeling on the floor in his gray janitor's uniform, surrounded by cleaning equipment. I wasn't informed this room was occupied. Ethan stood up slowly. Just finishing, ma'am. I can step outside if that's not necessary. Her voice was cool, controlled, but he could see the flash of irritation in her eyes. This wasn't part of the carefully choreographed tour. Gentlemen, as you can see, we maintain rigorous cleaning standards across all our facilities. Nothing less than perfection. She was turning his presence into a positive, spinning it in real time. Ethan had to admire the skill, even as he felt himself becoming a prop in her presentation. We'll just be a moment, one of the suits said, and they walked into the room, shoes clicking on the hardwood sections, carefully avoiding the wet carpet. They barely glanced at Ethan. He started gathering his equipment, moving toward the door, almost out. Almost... Excuse me. The youngest of the 3 suits, maybe 35, with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no, gestured at the conference table. These route maps, are these real-time data integrations? Claire moved to the table and Ethan saw his opportunity to slip out. But as he passed near the group, his equipment cart's wheel caught on the edge of the wet carpet. The extraction vacuum shifted, and Ethan grabbed for it, overcorrected, and the cart tilted. He caught it before anything fell. Barely. The room went silent. Careful. Claire's voice could have frozen nitrogen. That equipment costs more than you make in a month. Yes, ma'am. Sorry, ma'am. Perhaps you should finish this later, when we're not conducting business. Yes, ma'am. He was at the door when one of the suits spoke up. Actually, Claire, I'm curious. This is the level of attention to detail you provide? Someone cleaning during a facility tour? Claire's expression didn't change, but Ethan saw her spine straighten almost imperceptibly. Mr. Anderson, we're addressing a maintenance issue that occurred after hours. I assure you, I'm not criticizing, Anderson said, holding up his hands. I'm impressed. Most facilities would leave it until after the tour, present everything as perfect even when it's not. You're showing us reality. I respect that. The tension in Claire's shoulders eased slightly. We believe in transparency with our clients. She was spinning again, making the disaster work for her. What do you think? Anderson turned to Ethan suddenly. You work here. Is this company as good as Ms. Whitmore claims? Ethan froze. Every eye in the room was on him now. This wasn't his world. These weren't his people. He was the help, invisible. Yes, sir. Good company. Enthusiastic endorsement, Anderson laughed. But I'll take it. What do you do here exactly? Maintenance? Cleaning? Keep it simple. Keep it short. Get out. Must be interesting working around all these aircraft. You know anything about planes? And there it was, the question that had landmines buried all around it. Ethan felt Claire's eyes on him, felt the weight of the moment. He could say no, should say no. But something in Anderson's tone, something genuinely curious and not condescending, made him pause. A bit, sir. Yeah? What kind of planes we looking at out there? Anderson moved to the window overlooking the hangar floor. This was a mistake. Ethan knew it was a mistake, but his mouth was already moving. That's a Gulfstream G650, range about 7,000 nautical miles, ceiling 51,000 feet. The Falcon 8X next to it has a slightly longer range, more advanced avionics suite. The Global 7500 is the newest edition, 4 zones, full bedroom configuration possible. The silence in the room had changed texture. Anderson turned from the window, eyebrows raised. That's more than a bit. You a pilot? Was, long time ago. Military? Yes, sir. Which branch? This was spiraling. He needed to shut it down. Air Force, sir, but that was another life. If you'll excuse me, I should finish. Air Force? Anderson's interest was fully engaged now. What did you fly? Different things, mostly test aircraft. The truth was slipping out despite every instinct screaming at him to stop. Look, I really should… Wait. Claire's voice cut through the room like a knife. You're a test pilot. She said it the way someone might say, you're a unicorn? Was. Past tense. Like I said, another life. And now you're… She gestured at the cleaning equipment. Ethan met her eyes, saw the disbelief there, the judgment. Now I'm a janitor. Yes, ma'am. That's quite a fall. Her tone was neutral, but the words landed like punches. That's quite a perspective, Miss Whitmore. The air in the room crystallized. You didn't talk back to Claire Whitmore, not if you wanted to keep your job. Ethan watched her expression shift from surprise to something colder. I apologize, he said quickly. That was inappropriate. I should get back to work. Yes, Claire said slowly. You should. But Anderson wasn't done. Hold on. I'm fascinated by this. Test pilot to janitor, that's a hell of a story. What happened? Life happened, sir. Come on, you can do better than that. Respectfully, sir, I can't. And I need to finish this carpet before the stain sets permanently. Let it set, Anderson said, waving a hand. I'm more interested in… Mr. Anderson. Claire's voice had steel in it now. I'm sure our maintenance staff has a schedule to keep. Perhaps we should continue the tour. She was protecting him, Ethan realized. Not out of kindness, Claire Whitmore didn't do kindness, but because this conversation had gone off script and she was losing control of her own presentation. Right, Anderson said, but he was still looking at Ethan with frank curiosity. Tell you what, I'm hiring Claire's outfit for our corporate travel needs. 6-figure contract, probably more. But I've got one condition. Claire's expression was carefully neutral. What condition would that be? I want this guy, Anderson pointed at Ethan, to give me the straight truth about these aircraft, not the sales pitch, the real technical breakdown, pilot to pilot. The room went very still. Mr. Anderson, Claire said carefully, I appreciate your interest, but our janitor is not qualified to provide technical consultations on… He just rattled off specs on 3 different aircraft without hesitation, Anderson interrupted. He flew test aircraft for the Air Force. I'd say he's more than qualified. So here's the deal. He gives me 30 minutes of his time, honest assessment of your fleet's capabilities, and you've got my business. He doesn't, and I walk. Fair enough? It wasn't fair. It wasn't even sane. But Ethan watched Claire's mind work through the calculation. 6 figures, maybe more, all dependent on the janitor she'd been treating as invisible furniture for 2 years. She turned to Ethan. Her expression was glacial. Would you be willing to provide Mr. Anderson with a technical consultation? It was phrased as a question, but they both knew it wasn't. Yes, ma'am. Excellent. Anderson clapped his hands together. Give me the tour, Claire. Then I'll take 30 minutes with your Renaissance man here. The next 45 minutes were surreal. Ethan finished cleaning the carpet while Claire completed her tour with the Anderson party. He could hear them moving through the facility, Claire's voice smooth and confident, selling luxury and expertise and the Whitmore family legacy. When he was done, he returned his equipment to the maintenance closet and stood in the break room, drinking burnt coffee and wondering how his life had gotten this far off the rails. He should be home, should be picking up Noah from Mrs. Patterson's, making breakfast, reading dinosaur books before the kids' afternoon nap. Instead, he was about to discuss aircraft specifications with a millionaire while his boss watched like a snake deciding whether to strike. Ethan. Hendricks appeared in the doorway. Conference room, now. The carpet had dried mostly clean. Anderson sat at the head of the conference table, tablet open in front of him. Claire stood by the window, arms crossed. The other two suits had apparently been dismissed. Have a seat, Anderson said, gesturing to a chair. Ethan remained standing. I'm fine, sir. Suit yourself. Let's cut to it. I'm looking at purchasing a global 7,500 for my company's executive travel needs. Claire's giving me the luxury pitch, custom interiors, premium service, all that. What I want from you is the technical reality, reliability, maintenance costs, real-world performance versus manufacturer claims. Can you do that? Ethan glanced at Claire. Her expression was unreadable. Yes, sir. But I should clarify, I haven't flown a Global 7500 specifically. They're fairly new to the market. But you know the platform? I know Bombardier's design philosophy. I know the engine configuration. I know what to look for. Good enough. Talk to me. So Ethan talked. He explained the Global 7500's passport engines, their fuel efficiency versus power output, the trade-offs in the wing design that gave it range at the cost of some low-speed handling characteristics. He discussed realistic maintenance intervals, common technical issues with early production models, the learning curve for pilots transitioning from other platforms. He talked for 20 minutes, clear and technical and honest. Anderson took notes. Claire didn't move from her position by the window, but Ethan could feel her attention like a physical weight. When he finished, Anderson leaned back in his chair. That was the most useful 20 minutes I've had all week. You just saved me from making a very expensive mistake. I was looking at early production models. You're saying I should wait for the updated avionics package. If you can wait 6 months, yes, sir. The improvements are significant. I can wait. Anderson stood, extending his hand. Thank you. That was exactly what I needed. Ethan shook his hand. You're welcome, sir. Claire, we have a deal. I'll have my people send over the contracts. Anderson headed for the door, then paused. One more thing. You should hire this guy as a consultant. He's wasted on maintenance. When Anderson left, the silence was deafening. Claire turned from the window slowly. That was quite a performance. Just answered his questions, ma'am. Just answered his questions, she repeated. You, the night janitor, just closed a 6-figure contract by just answering questions. I'm glad I could help. Help? She walked toward him, each step deliberate. You've been here 2 years. 2 years of pushing a mop and emptying trash cans. And you never thought to mention you were a test pilot? It didn't seem relevant to the job I was hired for. Didn't seem relevant. Her laugh was sharp, bitter. Do you have any idea how much I pay consultants for the kind of technical analysis you just provided? No, ma'am. Thousands of dollars per hour. And you've been here the entire time, scrubbing floors for $16.50. That was the job I applied for. Why? The question came out harder than she probably intended. Why the hell would someone with your background be working as a janitor? And there it was. The question everyone always asked, the one he could never answer truthfully. Personal reasons, ma'am. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. They stared at each other. Ethan saw something in her expression, not quite anger, not quite curiosity, something else, something that looked almost like she'd been personally insulted by his choice to hide. You know what I think? Claire's voice dropped to something quieter, more dangerous. I think you're running from something. I think something broke you, and instead of fixing it, you're hiding in my hangar pretending to be someone you're not. The words hit closer than she could know. I think, she continued, that you're a coward. Ethan's hands clenched at his sides, but he kept his voice level. You're entitled to your opinion, Ms. Whitmore. Am I? Because my opinion doesn't seem to matter much to you. You've spent 2 years lying by omission, taking a paycheck for work you're overqualified for, wasting your potential. It's my potential to waste. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, you just proved you could be valuable, actually valuable. And instead, you're choosing to be invisible. That doesn't just affect you, it affects everyone who could benefit from what you know. I don't owe you my story, Ms. Whitmore. No, she agreed. But you owe me honesty. You work for this company, you represent this company, and I don't employ liars. I never lied. You lied every single day you walk through that door, pretending to be less than you are. The anger that Ethan had been suppressing for 2 years, suppressing for much longer than that, began to rise. He pushed it down, controlled it, locked it away. If you want to fire me, fire me. Otherwise, I'd like to go home. My shift ended an hour ago. Claire studied him for a long moment. You have a son. Ethan went very still. How do you know that? It's in your employment file. Emergency contact. Mrs. Patterson next door, 7-year-old son named Noah. That's private information. I own the company. Nothing's private. She moved closer. Is that why you're hiding? For him? Leave my son out of this. I'm not attacking your son. I'm trying to understand why a decorated military pilot is scrubbing toilets when he could be flying, when he should be flying. You don't know anything about what I should be doing. Then enlighten me. No. The word came out flat, final. With respect, Ms. Whitmore, my personal life is none of your business. I do my job. I do it well. What I did before this job, what I might do after this job, that's mine, not yours. Something flickered across Claire's face. Respect, maybe, or recognition of a boundary she couldn't cross. Fine, she said. Keep your secrets, but understand this. I just watched you close a major contract with skills you've been hiding. That changes things. It doesn't have to change anything. It already has. She walked to the conference table, picked up her phone. I'm raising your pay to $25 an hour, effective immediately, and I'm putting you on day shift. I don't want day shift. I don't care what you want. I need you visible, available. I have clients who could benefit from consultations like the one you just provided. I'm not a consultant. I'm a janitor. You're whatever I need you to be. That's not how this works. It's exactly how this works. You're an employee. I'm your employer. I'm reassigning your duties. Ethan felt the walls closing in. Day shift meant being visible, meant people asking questions, meant Noah having to go to after-school care instead of Ethan being there when he got off the bus. Meant exposure, attention, all the things he'd spent 2 years avoiding. I can't do day shift. I have obligations. Your son, I understand, will work around your schedule. You don't understand. You can't understand. Then help me understand. Claire's voice softened slightly. Talk to me. Why are you so determined to stay invisible? Because invisible means safe, Ethan thought. Invisible means Noah doesn't have to hear the whispers, doesn't have to know what his father lost, doesn't have to carry the weight of a history made of crashes and coffins and choices that can't be unmade. But he didn't say any of that. I just want to do my job and go home to my son, he said quietly. That's all I've ever wanted. Claire watched him for a long moment. That's not living. That's hiding. Maybe I like hiding. I don't believe that. Believe what you want. The tension stretched between them like a wire pulled too tight. Finally, Claire exhaled. Go home, Ethan. Get some sleep. When you come back tonight, we're going to have a longer conversation about your future with this company. There's nothing to discuss. There's everything to discuss, and one way or another we're going to discuss it. She turned back to the window, dismissing him. You're not invisible anymore. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be. Ethan left without another word. The drive home was 40 minutes through Chicago traffic, and Ethan spent every minute of it trying to unknot the tension in his chest. The morning sun was too bright. The radio news was too loud. Everything felt wrong, off balance, like the ground had shifted beneath him without warning. He parked in front of his apartment building, a modest 2-bedroom in a working-class neighborhood where people minded their own business, and sat for a moment, forehead against the steering wheel. 2 years. He'd made it 2 years without anyone looking too closely, without anyone asking too many questions. And now Claire Whitmore was peeling back layers he'd spent those 2 years carefully constructing. His phone buzzed. Text from Mrs. Patterson. Noah's having breakfast with me. No rush. He's telling me about dinosaurs. Naz. Ethan smiled despite everything. Noah. The one pure, uncomplicated good thing in his life. He climbed out of the car and walked next door. Mrs. Patterson answered before he could knock, a widow in her 70s who'd appointed herself Noah's unofficial grandmother and Ethan's unofficial support system. Rough shift? She asked, reading his face immediately. Long shift. Coffee's on. Noah's in the living room building something with those blocks you got him. Dad! Noah appeared in the hallway, gap-toothed grin bright enough to light the whole building. Look what I made! He held up a construction of blocks that might have been a dinosaur or a spaceship or an abstract representation of chaos. Ethan pulled him into a hug, breathed in the smell of syrup and childhood. That's amazing, buddy. Tell me about it. They sat on Mrs. Patterson's couch while Noah explained his creation in elaborate detail, complete with sound effects and dramatic gestures. Ethan listened, let the pure joy of his son's imagination wash away some of the morning's tension. Mr. Cole? Mrs. Patterson appeared with coffee. Everything okay? Yeah, just workplace stuff. The kind of workplace stuff that puts that look on your face? Ethan took the coffee. Maybe. You know you can talk to me. I know, thank you. She nodded, understanding that was all he could give right now. Noah's welcome here any time. You know that. I do, and I appreciate it more than I can say. 20 minutes later, Ethan and Noah were in their own apartment. Noah immediately started setting up his dinosaurs for what he called the Great Dinosaur Migration. Ethan made himself toast he didn't want and tried to think through his options. He could quit, find another night shift job somewhere else, start over, stay invisible. Claire was right. That wasn't living. And more importantly, it wasn't sustainable. Noah was 7 now. He'd be 8 soon. 9. 10. Eventually, he'd start asking questions about his father's past, about the trophies Ethan kept in a box in the closet, about the framed commendations that Ethan had never hung up. What would Ethan tell him then? That Dad used to be someone important, someone skilled, but he'd chosen to hide instead? Dad? Noah looked up from his dinosaurs. You okay? Yeah, buddy, just tired. You should sleep. That's what you always tell me when I'm tired. Ethan smiled. You're right. That's good advice. I'm going to be quiet so you can rest. I'll play with my dinosaurs very, very quiet. The kid's attempt at whispering was louder than his normal voice, and Ethan loved him so much in that moment it physically hurt. Thanks, Noah. I love you. Love you too, Dad. Ethan went to his bedroom and lay down, but sleep wouldn't come. His mind kept replaying the morning, Anderson's curiosity, Claire's anger, the weight of his own secrets pressing down. He'd left the Air Force 6 years ago after the crash that killed Captain Jennifer Marks, his co-pilot and friend. He'd left flying entirely 3 years ago when his wife Sarah died of cancer, leaving him alone with a 4-year-old son and a grief that had no edges, no boundaries, no end. He'd tried to keep flying at first, thought Sarah would want that. But every time he climbed into a cockpit, he saw Jenny's face, heard Sarah's voice telling him to come home safe. The fear had crept in slowly, then all at once, until he couldn't trust himself anymore. So he'd stopped, put away his wings, found the quietest, most invisible job he could, and focused everything on being a father, on giving Noah stability, safety, a dad who came home every night. Was that hiding? Or was it surviving? His phone buzzed, text from an unknown number. This is Claire Whitmore. We need to talk, tomorrow. My office, 2 p.m. This isn't optional. Ethan stared at the message. Tomorrow was Wednesday. His normal shift started at 10 p.m. She wanted him there at 2 p.m., prime business hours. Maximum visibility. He typed back, I work nights. I can't. Her response came immediately. Make it work. This is about your employment. His thumbs hovered over the keyboard. He could tell her no, could draw a line, but they both knew she held all the cards. Fine, he typed. Good. See you at 2. Ethan set the phone aside and closed his eyes, listening to Noah's whispered dinosaur narration in the next room. Whatever happened tomorrow, whatever Claire Whitmore wanted from him, he'd handle it. He'd protected Noah this long. He could keep protecting him. He had to. Because invisible or not, hiding or surviving, Ethan Cole was a father first. Everything else, the past, the skills, the man he used to be, was secondary. Or at least that's what he told himself as he finally drifted into uneasy sleep. While outside his window, the Chicago morning moved forward without him, indifferent to his choices, his fears, his desperate need to stay hidden just a little while longer. Just until Noah was older. Just until the wounds were less fresh. Just until... But time, as Ethan was about to discover, had run out for just until. The storm was coming. Ethan woke at noon to the sound of his phone ringing. Noah was still playing in the living room, the dinosaur migration apparently ongoing. The caller ID showed Whitmore Aviation's main line. He let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, it rang again. Same number. He answered. Hello? Mr. Cole. It wasn't Claire. It was Hendricks, and his voice had that clipped, nervous quality it got when he was delivering messages from above. Ms. Whitmore wanted me to confirm your 2 o'clock appointment. I got her text. She also wanted me to inform you that this meeting is mandatory. Failure to attend will be considered... I'll be there. Ethan cut him off. No point in making Hendricks' day worse. The man was just doing his job. Thank you. Oh, and Mr. Cole? She said to wear something presentable, not your uniform. Ethan looked down at his worn t-shirt and sweatpants. Understood. After Hendricks hung up, Ethan sat on the edge of his bed and ran his hands through his hair. Presentable. What the hell did Claire Whitmore consider presentable? He owned exactly 2 outfits that weren't jeans or his janitor's uniform. A black suit he'd worn to Sarah's funeral and a button-down shirt with khakis that he'd bought for Noah's school conferences. The suit seemed like too much. The khakis it was. He showered, dressed, and emerged to find Noah arranging his dinosaurs in what appeared to be a battle formation. You look fancy, Noah observed. Where are you going? I have to go back to work for a little bit. But you just came home. I know, buddy. It's just for a meeting. I'll be back by dinner. Noah's face fell. Can I come? Not this time. Mrs. Patterson said you can go over there, though. She mentioned something about baking cookies. The mention of cookies brightened Noah's expression considerably. Chocolate chip? You'll have to ask her. Okay. Noah paused. Dad, are you in trouble? The question caught Ethan off guard. What makes you think I'm in trouble? You have your worried face. 7 years old, and the kid could read him like a book. I'm not in trouble. My boss just wants to talk to me about some things. What things? Boring work stuff. Nothing for you to worry about. Noah studied him with those serious brown eyes, Sarah's eyes, and Ethan could see him processing, deciding whether to accept the answer. Finally, he nodded. Okay, but if you are in trouble, you can tell me. I'm good at helping. Ethan pulled him into a hug. I know you are. Best helper I've got. By 1:30, Ethan was in his car heading back toward the hangar, his stomach tight with anxiety. The afternoon traffic was lighter than the morning rush, and he made good time. Too good. He arrived at Whitmore Aviation at 1:50, which gave him 10 minutes to sit in the parking lot and contemplate all the ways this could go wrong. Through the windshield, he could see the hangar gleaming in the October sun. Expensive cars filled the visitor spaces, Mercedes, BMWs, one Tesla. This was the world of the day shift, the world of people who mattered. He'd been successfully avoiding it for 2 years. At 1:58, he got out of the car and walked inside. The hangar felt different in daylight, busier, more alive. Pilots in crisp uniforms moved with purpose. Maintenance crews worked on aircraft with the efficiency of a Formula One pit crew. Administrative staff hurried past with tablets and purpose. Nobody looked at Ethan, but he felt conspicuous anyway, like a ghost who'd accidentally materialized during business hours. Ethan? Marcus appeared from behind one of the aircraft. What are you doing here? You don't work until tonight. Meeting with Ms. Whitmore. Marcus's eyebrows rose. Really? What about? No idea. Huh. Well, good luck, I guess. She's been in a mood all day. Perfect. Ethan made his way to the administrative wing and found Claire's office. The door was open. She sat behind a massive desk made of dark wood and glass, typing on a laptop. She didn't look up. "You're early," she said. "You said 2 o'clock." "I did. I appreciate punctuality." She closed her laptop and gestured to one of the leather chairs across from her desk. "Sit." Ethan sat. The chair was expensive and uncomfortable in the way that expensive things often were. Claire studied him for a moment. "You clean up adequately." "Thank you." That wasn't a compliment. It was an observation. She stood and moved to the window overlooking the hangar floor. "I've been thinking about our conversation this morning." And I've concluded that you're wasting your potential, my resources, and my patience." Ethan said nothing. "I looked into your background," Claire continued. "Made some calls. You weren't just a test pilot. You were one of the best. Multiple commendations, safety awards. You flew experimental aircraft that most pilots wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole." That was a long time ago." 6 years, that's not ancient history." "It's ancient enough." She turned from the window. "Captain Jennifer Marks died in a crash, your co-pilot. You were flying an experimental variant of the F-22. Hydraulic failure at 40,000 feet. Ethan's hands clenched on the armrests. "I didn't come here to discuss—" "You ejected." "She didn't. The investigation cleared you of any wrongdoing, called it a mechanical failure, impossible to predict or prevent." Claire's voice was factual, almost clinical. "But you left the Air Force 6 months later." "Ms. Whitmore." "And then your wife died. Cancer. 3 years ago. You had a 4-year-old son. You tried to keep flying civilian aircraft for a while, but something changed. You stopped. Walked away completely." She sat back down, leaning forward on her desk. "And now you're here, scrubbing floors, hiding from a past that was brilliant." The anger Ethan had been controlling since morning ignited. "You had no right to dig into my life." "I had every right. You're my employee. I did a background check." "A background check is one thing. This is necessary because I need to understand what I'm dealing with." "You're not dealing with anything. I'm a janitor. I clean your floors. That's the extent of our professional relationship." "That was true yesterday. It's not true today." Claire opened a folder on her desk. "James Anderson called me this morning. He was impressed with your consultation. So impressed that he's recommended you to 3 other potential clients. I now have requests for technical assessments on aircraft purchases totaling over $20 million. Ethan stared at her. "What?" "You heard me. Your little Q&A session this morning just became my most effective marketing tool. I'm not a consultant. You are now. Or you will be if you accept my offer." "I don't want your offer." "You haven't heard it yet." "I don't need to hear it." "The answer is no." Claire leaned back in her chair, studying him. "You're afraid." "Excuse me?" "You're afraid. That's why you're hiding. Captain Marks died, and you blame yourself. Your wife died, and you couldn't control that either. So now you're choosing the safest, smallest life possible because you think that's how you protect your son." Every word was a knife, precisely placed. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I? I watched you this morning. You came alive when you were talking about those aircraft. For 20 minutes, you weren't a janitor hiding from his past. You were a pilot, a damn good one. And it terrified you." "Ms. Whitmore, here's my offer." She slid a document across the desk. "Consultant position, $50 an hour for technical assessments. Flexible schedule. You can work around your son's needs. You'll still do maintenance work if you want. Some people find it therapeutic, I'm told, but your primary role will be providing expertise to clients." Ethan didn't touch the document. "And if I refuse?" "Then you continue as night janitor. Same pay, same shift, nothing changes." She paused. "Except we both know that's a lie. Everything already changed. You can't put this genie back in the bottle. Watch me." "Ethan." She said his name like a weapon. "I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to help you." "I don't need your help." "Maybe not, but those clients do. They're making million-dollar decisions based on sales pitches and glossy brochures. You could give them the truth. You could keep them safe." It was a smart play, and they both knew it. appeal to his sense of responsibility, his protective instincts, the same instincts that had made him a good pilot. "Why do you care?" Ethan asked. "Why does any of this matter to you?" Claire was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice had lost some of its edge. "My father was a pilot, one of the best. He built this company from nothing, flying cargo routes in planes that should have been grounded. He took risks because he had to, because that's what you did to survive." She looked past Ethan at something he couldn't see. "He died in a crash when I was 16. Mechanical failure. Something that could have been caught if someone had looked closer, pushed harder, told the truth instead of telling him what he wanted to hear." The office was very quiet. "I inherited this company," Claire continued, "and I swore I'd never let that happen again. Never let profit override safety. Never let people make decisions without all the information." She focused back on Ethan. "You have information that could save lives, and you're choosing to hide it because you're scared." "I'm not scared. I'm realistic. I have a son to think about." "Then think about him. Think about the example you're setting. Is this what you want him to see? His father hiding from who he is? I want him to see his father coming home every night, safe, alive. There. Those aren't mutually exclusive. Aren't they? Because the last time I was a pilot, people died." There it was. The truth he'd been avoiding, the weight he carried every day. Claire's expression softened slightly. "Captain Mark's death wasn't your fault. You don't know that. The investigation said I was the pilot in command. She trusted me. She died. That's what I know." "And your wife?" Ethan stood up. "We're done here. Sit down, please." "No, you've made your offer. I've declined. There's nothing else to discuss." "Ethan." "Ms. Whitmore, with all due respect, you don't get to do this. You don't get to dig into my trauma and use it to manipulate me into being what you need. That's not what I'm doing. Isn't it? You want a consultant? Fine. Hire someone else. There are plenty of qualified pilots who jump at this opportunity. I don't want someone else. I want you." "Why? Because I'm broken? Because you think you can fix me?" "Because you're honest." Claire stood as well, meeting his eyes. "Because you told Anderson the truth, even though the truth might have cost me a contract. Because when you talked about those aircraft, you weren't trying to sell anything, you were just trying to keep people safe. That's rare, and that's valuable." Ethan wanted to argue, to maintain his anger, but the fight was draining out of him. He was tired, so tired of carrying this weight alone. "I can't be who you want me to be," he said quietly. "I don't want you to be anyone except who you are." "And who is that? Because I'm not sure anymore." Claire walked around her desk, closing some of the distance between them. "You're a father, a skilled pilot, a man who's been dealt a terrible hand and is doing his best to survive it. That's who you are." That's a generous interpretation. It's an accurate one. She picked up the document she'd slid across the desk earlier. "Take this home. Read it. Think about it. You don't have to decide today. The answer will still be no. Maybe, but at least it'll be an informed no." She held out the paper. Ethan took it, more to end the conversation than anything else. "Is that all?" "One more thing. There's a situation developing that I need to brief you on." "A situation?" "A storm system. Hurricane Raphael. It's been tracking up from the Caribbean, and the models show it making landfall in South Florida tomorrow evening." Ethan frowned. "Okay. What does that have to do with me?" "My mother lives in Miami. She's scheduled for emergency heart surgery tomorrow morning. I was supposed to fly down tonight with our chief pilot to be there for the procedure. I'm sorry to hear about your mother, but I still don't see. Captain Rodriguez just called in sick, food poisoning, and our backup pilot is in Seattle on a job." Claire moved back to her window. "I've been making calls all morning. Every charter pilot in the region is either booked or refusing to fly with this storm approaching." Understanding began to dawn. "Ms. Whitmore, I need to be in Miami by 9 tonight. The surgery is at 6 a.m. tomorrow. If everything goes well, I'll be back before the storm hits. If not..." She turned to face him. "My mother is 73 years old. She's had 2 previous cardiac events. This surgery is necessary, but high risk. I need to be there." "I understand that, but I'm not asking you to fly." Not yet. I'm telling you the situation because it may impact operations. If I can't get to Miami, if something happens to my mother, I'll be unavailable for the next few days. Ethan heard what she wasn't saying. Claire Whitmore, the woman who controlled every detail of her company with iron precision, was afraid. Her mother was dying and she was powerless. Have you tried the commercial airlines? He asked. The last flight that could get me there in time left an hour ago. I was on a conference call and missed it. Her voice cracked slightly. I've been trying to fix this for 3 hours. I've called everyone. There's no one. They stood in silence. Ethan could feel the weight of what she wasn't asking, what hung in the air between them unspoken. How bad is the storm? He asked. Claire pulled up a weather map on her computer screen. Category 4 hurricane, winds up to 140 miles per hour. The leading edge will hit Miami around midnight tomorrow. Right now it's about 200 miles offshore. And you want to fly into that? I want to fly ahead of it. There's a window, tight but viable. I'd be in Miami before the worst of it arrives and out again by tomorrow afternoon if the surgery goes smoothly. And if it doesn't go smoothly, then I'll deal with that when it happens. Ethan studied the weather map. The storm was massive, a swirling monster of red and orange on the radar. Flying into its path was insane. Even flying near it was dangerous. You can't do this, he said. I don't have a choice. You always have a choice. Easy to say when it's not your mother. Claire's voice was sharp again, the vulnerability buried. I'm informing you as a courtesy. If I'm not back by your shift tonight, Hendricks will be in charge. Claire. He used her first name without thinking. This is suicide. That storm. I'm aware of the risks. Are you? Because I don't think you are. That's not a storm you can just fly around. It's unpredictable, violent, and getting worse by the hour. I'll take that chance. For what? To watch a surgery you can't control anyway? The slap of his words hung in the air. Claire's face went pale, then red. Get out, she said quietly. Claire, get out of my office. Now. Ethan grabbed the contract document from her desk and left. His hands were shaking. In the hallway, he leaned against the wall and tried to calm his breathing. He'd crossed a line, multiple lines, but he was right, and she knew it. Flying into that storm was madness born of desperation and guilt, and the same impulse that had made Ethan hide for 2 years. The need to control something, anything, when the world felt out of control. He was walking toward the exit when he ran into Hendricks. Mr. Cole, did Mrs. Whitmore brief you on the situation? She did? Good. I'm coordinating with our Miami contacts to find alternative solutions, but so far, Hendricks rubbed his temples. It's not looking good. She can't fly into that storm, Hendricks. You know that. I do. But try telling her that. When Claire Whitmore decides something, she doesn't listen to reason. Someone needs to make her listen. That someone isn't going to be me. I value my job. Hendricks checked his phone. Look, between you and me, I'm worried. She's been making calls for the past hour, trying to find anyone crazy enough to fly this route. She's offering double rates, triple rates. She's desperate, which makes her dangerous. I know, but what can I do? She owns the company. Ethan looked back toward Claire's office. Let me think about this. Think fast. She's planning to leave by 6 whether she has a pilot or not. Back in his car, Ethan sat with the contract document on the passenger seat and his phone in his hand. He should drive home. Should pick up Noah from Mrs. Patterson's and forget this entire day happened. Should let Claire Whitmore make her own mistakes. But he kept seeing the weather map. The massive storm. The impossible approach into Miami International with crosswinds that would tear most aircraft apart. He pulled up a weather app and studied the forecast. The storm was accelerating, moving faster than the earlier models predicted. The window Claire thought she had was closing. His phone rang, unknown number again. Hello? Ethan Cole? A man's voice, older, rough with authority. Who is this? Colonel James Whitmore. Retired, Claire's father. Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. Claire's father is dead. That's what most people think, makes life simpler. A dry laugh. I'm not dead, just retired, living in Florida, which is where my ex-wife is currently preparing for surgery. I don't understand. I understand my daughter tried to hire you as a consultant. How did you... I also understand she's trying to fly into Hurricane Raphael to hold her mother's hand during a surgery that has a 70% success rate. That's about right. And I understand you're a former Air Force test pilot who's been scrubbing floors for 2 years. Your daughter's been busy making calls. Claire doesn't do anything by half measures. Never has. The colonel paused. I'm calling because I need you to do something for me. I don't know you. No, but you know what it's like to lose people, to carry that weight. Claire told me about your co-pilot, your wife. I'm sorry for your losses. Ethan said nothing. My daughter is brilliant and stubborn and convinced she can control things that can't be controlled. Sound familiar? What do you want, Colonel? I want you to fly her to Miami. The words hung in the air like a challenge. No, Ethan said immediately. Why not? Because I don't fly anymore. Because that storm is suicide. Because she's your daughter, and if you're so worried, you should be the one talking her out of this. I tried. She hung up on me. We don't have the best relationship. Then maybe you should work on that instead of asking strangers to risk their lives. You're not a stranger. You're a pilot. One of the best, according to your record. My record doesn't matter. I don't fly. Why not? That's none of your business. It is if my daughter's life is at stake. The colonel's voice hardened. Look, Cole, I know fear when I hear it. I flew combat missions in 2 wars. I've seen good pilots lose their nerve. It happens. But here's the thing. Claire is going to fly into that storm whether you help her or not. The question is whether she does it with someone who knows what they're doing or whether she convinces some desperate charter pilot to kill them both. Then stop her. Ground the plane. I can't. I don't have access to her aircraft. I don't have authority over her company. All I have is this phone call and the hope that you're not as much of a coward as you're pretending to be. Ethan's jaw clenched. I'm hanging up now. Your co-pilot died because of a mechanical failure you couldn't prevent. Your wife died because cancer doesn't care about fair. You didn't kill them. You couldn't save them. But you can save Claire. If you choose to. There's a 7-year-old kid who needs his father. I get that. But what kind of father are you if you let someone die when you could have helped? What kind of man does that make you? The line went dead. Ethan sat in his car, knuckles white on the steering wheel, the colonel's words echoing in his head. What kind of man does that make you? He looked at his watch. 4:15 p.m. If Claire was planning to leave by 6, he had less than 2 hours to decide whether to stay hidden or step back into the life he'd spent 2 years running from. His phone buzzed. Text from Noah. Mrs. Patterson is teaching me to make cookies. They have chocolate chips and peanut butter. Ethan smiled despite everything. His son was safe, happy, making cookies with a kind neighbor. That's what mattered. That's all that should matter. But in his mind, he saw the weather map, saw the storm, saw an aircraft trying to navigate that chaos with an inexperienced pilot at the controls. He started the car and drove, not toward home, but back toward Whitmore Aviation. The hangar was quieter when Ethan returned at 4:45. The day shift was winding down, mechanics securing tools, pilots finishing their post-flight paperwork. He found Claire in the hangar's operations center, standing before a wall of weather monitors with her phone pressed to her ear. I understand the risks, she was saying, her voice tight with controlled frustration. But I'm willing to pay premium rates for... Yes, I'm aware of the insurance implications. No, I don't have time to wait until... She closed her eyes. Thank you for your time. She ended the call and stood there for a moment, shoulders rigid, staring at the swirling red mass on the weather display. Strike out again? Ethan asked from the doorway. Claire turned, surprise flickering across her face before the mask of control slid back into place. I thought you left. I did. I came back. Why? Ethan stepped into the operations center, letting the door close behind him. Your father called me. Something shifted in Claire's expression. Of course he did. He's worried about you. He's always worried about me. Usually from a safe distance. She turned back to the weather displays. Did he send you here to talk me out of this? No, he sent me here to fly you to Miami. The silence stretched between them. Claire slowly turned to face him, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked uncertain. What did you say? I said your father sent me here to fly you to Miami. I haven't decided if I'm going to do it. Why would you even consider it? 2 hours ago, you were ready to walk out of my life forever. 2 hours ago, I thought you were just being manipulative. Now I think you're being suicidal, and apparently I have a problem with that. Claire's laugh was sharp and humorless. How noble of you. It's not nobility. It's pragmatism. You're going to fly into that storm whether I help you or not. At least if I'm there, you might survive it. Might? That's the best I can offer. That storm is a monster, Claire. Even with perfect conditions and a skilled pilot, this flight is borderline insane. Then why are you offering? Ethan moved closer to the weather display, studying the hurricane's projected path. Because your father was right. I've spent 2 years hiding from who I am, from what I can do. And maybe that was necessary for a while. But letting you die because I'm afraid to fly again? That's not protecting my son. That's just being a coward. You're not a coward. You called me one this morning. I was wrong. Claire's voice was quieter now. I was angry and wrong. Maybe. Or maybe you were right and I just didn't want to hear it. Ethan turned to face her. Here are my conditions. I fly. You sit in the passenger cabin. You don't question my decisions. You don't countermand my orders. And if I say we abort, we abort. No arguments. Those are pretty strict terms. That storm doesn't negotiate. Neither do I. Claire studied him for a long moment. What changed your mind? Really? Your father asked me what kind of man I'd be if I let you die when I could help. I didn't have a good answer. And now? Now I'm still not sure. But I'm here anyway. Claire walked to her desk and pulled up a flight plan on her computer. The Gulfstream G650 is already fueled and pre-flighted. Captain Rodriguez finished the inspection before he got sick. Flight time to Miami is approximately 2 hours and 40 minutes under normal conditions. These aren't normal conditions. I know, with the storm track, we'll need to adjust our approach. Come in from the west, stay ahead of the leading edge. Ethan moved to the computer and studied the flight plan. Rodriguez had plotted a conservative route, but that was before the storm had accelerated. This doesn't account for the new track. We need to file an amended plan. Can you do that? I can. But Claire, you need to understand something. Even with the best planning, this is going to be rough. We'll be fighting headwinds the entire way down. The approach into Miami is going to be brutal. And if anything goes wrong, if the weather window closes faster than predicted, we won't have anywhere to land. Every airport in South Florida will be shutting down. I understand. Do you? Because once we're in the air, there's no changing your mind, no turning back. We're committed. I'm already committed. My mother goes into surgery in 13 hours. I'm going to be there. Ethan saw the determination in her eyes, the fear she was trying to hide beneath it. He recognized it because he'd lived with that same cocktail of emotions for 2 years. Okay, he said. Give me 30 minutes to review the aircraft systems and file the new flight plan. We'll depart at 17:30. That's earlier than I planned. The storm's accelerating. We need every minute we can get. Claire nodded. What do you need from me? Stay out of my way while I prep. And call your mother. Tell her you're coming. She doesn't know I'm trying to get there. Then tell her, because if something goes wrong, if this flight doesn't end the way we hope, she should know you tried. Claire's composure cracked slightly. Don't say that. I'm a realist, Claire. I don't make promises I can't keep. All I can promise is that I'll do everything in my power to get you there safely. The rest is up to physics and luck. I'll take those odds. You'd better, because in 30 minutes, they're the only odds you'll have. Ethan left her standing in the operations center and made his way to the hangar floor. The Gulfstream G650 sat in its designated spot, sleek and powerful, $50 million worth of cutting-edge aviation technology. He hadn't been this close to a cockpit in 3 years. His hands were shaking. He stood at the base of the air stairs, 1 foot on the first step, and felt the weight of every choice that had brought him to this moment. Jenny's face flashed in his mind. Sarah's voice. Noah's gap-toothed smile. What was he doing? You okay? Marcus appeared beside him, carrying a toolkit. Heard you're flying Ms. Whitmore to Miami. News travels fast. Hendricks told everyone. He's relieved someone's finally taking this off his plate. Marcus looked up at the aircraft. That's a hell of a bird. You qualified on the G65, I am. Ethan had flown Gulfstreams during his civilian aviation days, before Sarah died, before he'd walked away from everything. The muscle memory was still there, buried under years of deliberate forgetting. Must be like riding a bike, right? More like riding a bike through a hurricane. Marcus laughed, then realized Ethan was serious. Wait, you're actually flying into that storm? Ahead of it, theoretically. Man, that's insane. Yeah. Ethan took a breath and climbed the stairs. The cockpit was exactly as he remembered. 6 large displays forming a glass cockpit, the evolved human-machine interface that made the G6501 one of the most advanced business jets in the world. Fly-by-wire controls, redundant systems, technology that could compensate for almost any emergency. Almost. Ethan slid into the left seat and felt something inside him shift. The cockpit wrapped around him like a second skin, familiar and foreign at the same time. His hands found the controls without conscious thought. His eyes scanned the instruments in the pattern he'd learned a lifetime ago. He was home, and it terrified him. For the next 20 minutes, he went through the pre-flight sequence with methodical precision. Checked the fuel load, verified the hydraulic systems, tested the flight controls. Every switch, every gauge, every backup system. The aircraft was in perfect condition. Rodriguez had done his job well. Ethan pulled up the weather data on the navigation display and felt his stomach tighten. The storm had intensified in just the past hour. Category 4, sustained winds of 145 miles per hour. The eye was massive, the outer bands reaching hundreds of miles from the center. They'd be flying through the leading edge on approach into Miami. He filed an amended flight plan with air traffic control, routing them west of the storm's predicted path. It would add 15 minutes to the flight time, but it gave them the best chance of staying ahead of the worst weather. His phone buzzed. Text from Mrs. Patterson. Noah wants to know when you'll be home. I told him you had to work late. He's fine here as long as you need? Ethan's chest tightened. He typed back. Something came up at work. Emergency situation. I might be very late tonight. Is that okay? Her response came immediately. Of course, we're having a movie night. Don't worry about Noah. You do what you need to do. He almost texted back the truth. Almost told her he was about to fly into a hurricane for a woman who'd spent 2 years treating him like furniture. Almost explained that he was risking everything, including coming home to his son, because he couldn't live with himself if he didn't. Instead, he wrote, Thank you. You're a lifesaver. Stay safe, Ethan. He put the phone away and focused on the final pre-flight checks. At 5:20, Claire appeared at the cockpit door. She'd changed into dark pants and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked younger somehow, more vulnerable without the armor of her business suit. We ready? She asked. Almost. You have a bag? Small carry-on, already stowed in the cabin. Good. Take a seat in the main cabin. Use the forward-facing seat and buckle in tight. This is going to be a rough ride. Claire didn't move. Can I ask you something? Now's not the best time. When was the last time you flew? Ethan's hands paused on the pre-flight checklist. 3 years, 2 months, 14 days. That's very specific. It was the day of my wife's funeral. I took a friend's Cessna up after everyone left, flew for about an hour, landed, and never got in a cockpit again. Until today. Until today. Why did you stop? Ethan turned to face her. Because every time I flew, I saw their faces. Jenny in the cockpit beside me. Sarah waiting at home. Flying used to be freedom. After they died, it was just fear. Fear that I'd make a mistake. Fear that I'd lose control. Fear that I'd leave Noah alone. He paused. So I stopped, traded the sky for a mop, and convinced myself I was being responsible. And now? Now I'm about to find out if I still remember how to do this. So please, Claire, go sit down and let me work. She nodded and disappeared into the cabin. Ethan completed the final checks and contacted the tower. Chicago Tower, Gulfstream, November 7-3. Whiskey Alpha, ready for taxi. November 7-3, Whiskey Alpha, Chicago Tower, taxi to runway 27 left via taxiway Alpha. Be advised, we're showing significant weather development along your filed route. Copy that, tower. We're monitoring the situation. Winds are 270 at 15, gusts to 25. Altimeter 3012. 3012. November 7. 3 Whiskey Alpha. Ethan released the parking brake and advanced the throttles slightly. The Gulf Stream rolled forward smoothly, 60,000 pounds of aircraft responding to his inputs like it was reading his mind. The muscle memory was there, stronger than he'd expected. They taxied to the runway, and Ethan ran through the final checks. The sun was low on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Beautiful and ominous at the same time. Chicago Tower, November 7-3 Whiskey. Alpha, ready for departure, runway 27 left. November 7-3 Whiskey. Alpha, cleared for takeoff, runway 27 left. Fly runway heading, climb and maintain 3000. Cleared for takeoff, 27 left, climb to 3000, November 7-3 Whiskey. Alpha. Ethan lined up on the center line and took a breath. This was it. The moment where theory became reality. Where 3 years of hiding ended and whatever came next began. He pushed the throttles forward. The Rolls-Royce BR-725 engine spooled up with a rising howl, 16,900 pounds of thrust per engine pushing the aircraft down the runway. The acceleration pressed Ethan back into his seat. Airspeed indicator climbing, 40 knots, 60, 80. The runway lights became a blur. V1, he called out, though there was no co-pilot to hear him. Rotate! Ethan pulled back gently on the yoke, and the Gulf Stream lifted off the runway like it was meant to fly, like the bonds of Earth were just suggestions. The gear came up with a solid thunk. Chicago fell away beneath them. Ethan was flying again. His heart was hammering, his palms slick with sweat, but his hands were steady on the controls. The aircraft climbed smoothly through 3,000 feet, 5,000, 8,000. The city lights spread out below like a constellation. November 7-3 Whiskey Alpha. Contact departure on 124.7. 247, November 7-3 Whiskey Alpha. Ethan switched frequencies and checked in with departure control, who cleared them to climb to flight level 410, 41,000 feet. The G65OHU's sweet spot, where the thin air and efficient engines gave them range and speed. They climbed through broken clouds, the sun setting to their right, and Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Not quite peace, not quite joy, but something close to both. Something that felt like coming home. How are we doing? Claire's voice came through the intercom. Smooth so far. We're at 25,000 feet, climbing to cruise altitude. Flight time to Miami is 2 hours, 30 minutes, give or take. And the storm? Ethan checked the weather radar. The massive system was clearly visible, a solid mass of red and purple filling the eastern horizon. Still tracking northwest, we'll start seeing the outer bands in about 90 minutes. Is that going to be a problem? Depends on how fast it's moving. Right now, we're ahead of it. We need to stay ahead of it. Can we? I'll do my best. Claire was quiet for a moment. Ethan? Yeah? Thank you for doing this. Thank me when we land. They leveled off at 41,000 feet, and Ethan engaged the autopilot, though his hand stayed close to the controls. The G650 cut through the darkening sky at Mach 0, 85, 567 miles per hour, chasing the sunset south. Below them, the lights of cities and towns formed patterns against the darkness. Indianapolis, Louisville, Nashville. Each one a reminder of the world continuing on, unaware of the desperate race happening above. An hour into the flight, they crossed into Georgia airspace, and the first wisps of cloud appeared on the weather radar, the storm's leading edge reaching out like fingers. Ethan disengaged the autopilot and took manual control. The turbulence started gradually, little bumps that rattled the airframe. He adjusted their altitude, searching for smoother air. It's getting rough back here, Claire said through the intercom. It's going to get rougher. Make sure you're buckled in tight. I am. The clouds thickened around them, and the turbulence intensified. The Gulf Stream shook and bucked, rising and falling in the unstable air. Ethan's hands moved constantly on the controls, making small corrections, fighting to keep the aircraft stable. Lightning flickered in the distance. then closer. Then all around them, brilliant purple-white flashes that lit up the clouds like a strobe light. Miami Center, November 7-3 Whiskey Alpha, requesting descent to flight level 330. Lower altitude, below the worst of the ice and turbulence. November 7-3 Whiskey Alpha, Miami Center, descend and maintain flight level 330. Be advised, we're showing extreme weather 40 miles northeast of the field. Multiple aircraft are diverting. Copy that, Center. We're committed to Miami International. Understood. November 7-3 Whiskey Alpha. Advise when you have field in sight. Ethan descended through the turbulence, the aircraft pitching and rolling despite his best efforts. The rain hit suddenly, a wall of water that hammered the windscreen and reduced visibility to zero. The wipers were useless against the deluge. He was flying on instruments now, trusting the technology, trusting his training, trusting muscle memory that was 3 years old, but apparently still sharp. Ethan? Claire's voice was tight with fear. What's happening? We're in the outer bands of the storm. This is normal. This doesn't feel normal. It's not, but it's manageable. Stay calm. A massive jolt of turbulence slammed the aircraft sideways. Ethan heard something crash in the cabin. He fought the controls, wrestling the Gulfstream back to level flight. Claire, you okay? I'm fine, just a little terrified. That's reasonable. Another lightning strike so close that Ethan felt it through the airframe. The instruments flickered, his heart rate spiked, but the backup systems kicked in immediately. Everything was still working. Miami Center, November 7-3 Whiskey Alpha. We just took a lightning strike. All systems nominal. Continuing approach. Copy that. November 7-3 Whiskey Alpha. You're cleared for the ILS approach runway 08 right. Wind is 090 at 35, gusting to 50. Low-level wind shear advisories in effect. 50-knot gusts, crosswinds that would push them sideways during the approach. Wind shear that could slam them into the ground if Ethan wasn't careful. This was insane. This was exactly what he'd been avoiding for 3 years, and he was doing it anyway. Ethan configured the aircraft for landing. Gear down, flaps extended, airspeed bleeding off to approach speed. The Gulfstream descended through the storm, bucking and shaking, while Ethan held it on the glide slope through sheer will and skill. Miami International in sight, he called out, seeing the runway lights emerge from the rain like a distant beacon. November 7-3 Whiskey Alpha, cleared to land, runway 08 right, wind 090 at 40, gusting to 55. The winds had increased. Of course they had. Ethan crabbed the aircraft into the crosswind, pointing the nose left of the runway to compensate for the wind pushing them right. The runway lights grew closer. 1,000 feet, 500 feet, 300 feet. A massive gust hit them from the right. The aircraft lurched sideways. Ethan responded instantly, adding power, adjusting the controls, fighting to keep them aligned with the runway. The ground rushed up, too fast, too steep. He pulled back on the yoke, arrested the descent, felt the wheels kiss the runway with a barely controlled impact. The aircraft bounced, and for one heart-stopping moment, Ethan thought they were going to cartwheel. But the wheels settled again, and he deployed the thrust reversers, maximum braking, fighting to keep the aircraft on the center line as the crosswinds tried to push them off the runway. They slowed, stopped, sat on the runway with rain hammering the fuselage and wind rocking the aircraft. Ethan's hands were shaking so hard he could barely key the radio. November 7-3 Whiskey Alpha is down and safe. Welcome to Miami, November 7-3 Whiskey Alpha. Taxi to General Aviation via Taxiway Charlie. Weather's going to deteriorate rapidly. Suggest you button up as soon as possible. Roger that, Tower. Ethan taxied to the General Aviation terminal and shut down the engines. The sudden silence was deafening. He sat in the cockpit, hands still on the controls, trying to remember how to breathe. He'd done it. He'd flown into a hurricane and survived. Claire appeared in the cockpit doorway, her face pale. That was the most terrifying experience of my life. Welcome to professional aviation. How were you so calm? I wasn't calm. I was terrified. But fear doesn't change the physics. The aircraft doesn't care if you're scared. It just responds to inputs. Ethan unbuckled and stood on shaky legs. We're here. You've got about 8 hours before the storm hits for real. Make them count. You're not coming to the hospital? No, I'm staying with the aircraft. If the weather window closes before you're ready to leave, you're stuck here. I need to monitor the conditions. Be ready to fly the second it's safe. Claire nodded. There's a car waiting. The surgery is scheduled for 6 a.m. at Jackson Memorial. Go, be with your mother. She hesitated at the cockpit door. Ethan, what you just did, that landing was necessary, nothing more. It was extraordinary. It was physics and practice. Now go. After Claire left, Ethan collapsed back into the pilot's seat and let the adrenaline shake through him. His phone had 7 missed calls from Mrs. Patterson, 3 texts from Noah asking when he'd be home. It was almost midnight Chicago time. Noah would be asleep by now, dreaming of dinosaurs and cookies. Ethan was in Miami, having just flown through a hurricane, feeling more alive and more terrified than he'd felt in 3 years. He pulled up the weather forecast and studied the storm's projected path. They had maybe 12 hours. 14 if they were lucky. After that, Miami International would shut down completely, and they'd be trapped here until the hurricane passed. Outside the aircraft, the wind howled and the rain came down in sheets, the leading edge of Hurricane Raphael, making its presence known. And Ethan sat in the cockpit of a $50 million jet, watching the storm approach, and wondered what the hell he'd just done. The answer came to him slowly, reluctantly. He'd stopped hiding. For better or worse, the man he used to be was clawing his way back to the surface, and there was no putting that genie back in the bottle. Not anymore. The hours crawled past in the darkened cockpit while the storm built its strength outside. Ethan monitored the weather radar, watching the massive spiral of Hurricane Raphael inch closer to the coast. The eye was well defined now, a perfect circle of calm surrounded by walls of chaos. It would make landfall around noon tomorrow, maybe earlier if it continued to accelerate. At 2:17 a.m., his phone rang. Claire, how's your mother? He asked. In surgery. They started early because of the storm. The surgical team wants to finish before the hospital goes to emergency protocols. Her voice was strained, exhausted. The surgeon said it's going well, but it'll be at least another 3 hours. Ethan checked the weather update he'd just pulled. We might not have 3 hours. What do you mean? The storm is moving faster than predicted. The airport is issuing final departure warnings. After 7 a.m., they're shutting down completely. Silence on the other end. Then quietly, I can't leave her, Ethan, not while she's still in surgery. I know. But I also can't ask you to stay here and risk. You're not asking, I'm staying, but you need to understand what that means. If this storm hits while we're still here, we could be stuck for days, maybe longer. I understand. Does your father know? I called him after I got to the hospital. He's here, actually, in the waiting room. That surprised Ethan. I thought you two didn't have the best relationship. We don't. But apparently near-death experiences bring out the sentimental side of former military pilots. A pause. He wants to talk to you. Before Ethan could respond, a different voice came on the line. Older, rougher, carrying the weight of command even in 2 words. Cole? Colonel Whitmore. Thank you for getting my daughter here safely. The tower told me about your landing. 50-knot crosswinds in near-zero visibility. That took skill. Just doing the job, sir. Bullshit. That was more than just doing the job. That was exceptional flying from someone who hasn't touched a cockpit in 3 years. The colonel paused. You still got it. Got what, sir? The touch, the instinct, whatever you want to call it. Some pilots fly by the book, others fly like the aircraft is an extension of themselves. You're the second kind. Always were, according to your service record. You read my service record? Of course I did. After my daughter told me she was hiring a janitor to fly her into a hurricane, I needed to know who the hell I was trusting with her life. Another pause. Captain Jennifer Marks, Edwards Air Force Base, experimental F-22 variant. You two were testing the new hydraulic system when it failed at altitude. Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. Sir, I don't... The investigation cleared you, called it an unforeseen mechanical failure, but you left the service anyway. Why? Personal reasons. That's what people say when they don't want to tell the truth. Maybe the truth isn't anyone's business but mine. The colonel laughed, a harsh sound. Fair enough. But let me tell you something, Cole. I've lost people under my command. Good people, friends. And it tears you apart, wondering if you could have done something different, could have been faster, smarter, better. But here's what I learned after 30 years of flying and commanding. Sometimes people die, and it's not your fault. It's just physics and bad luck and the inherent risk of defying gravity. With respect, sir, that's easy to say when you weren't the one at the controls. You think I never lost someone due to my decisions? You think I never gave an order that got someone killed? The colonel's voice hardened. I have, multiple times, and I live with that, but I don't hide from it. Because hiding doesn't honor their memory. Flying does. Living does. Being the best damn pilot you can be and making sure their deaths meant something, that honors them. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. My daughter's been through hell, the colonel continued. Lost her mother, my ex-wife, to health issues that never seemed to end. Lost her faith in me a long time ago, and rightfully so. Built a company from my legacy and spent every day trying to prove she's more than just my daughter. And now she's in a hospital waiting room, terrified because for once in her life she can't control the outcome. Why are you telling me this? Because she trusts you. After one day, after you flew through a goddamn hurricane, she trusts you. And Claire doesn't trust easily. She barely knows me. She knows enough. She knows you're the real thing, and when you're surrounded by fake people your whole life, the real thing stands out. The colonel's tone softened slightly. Stay safe, Cole. Get my daughter home when this is over. I'll do my best, sir. I know you will. That's why I called you in the first place. The line switched back to Claire. Sorry about that. He's intense. He cares about you. In his own way, yes. She sounded tired. Ethan, you should try to get some sleep. You've been awake for over 24 hours. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're running on adrenaline and stubbornness. The aircraft has a bed in the aft cabin. Use it. I need to monitor the weather. You need to be functional when it's time to fly us out of here, which means you need sleep. The weather will still be terrible in 4 hours. Trust me. She had a point. Ethan's eyes were burning, his mind starting to fuzz around the edges. Okay, 2 hours. That's it. I'll call you if anything changes with the surgery. After hanging up, Ethan made his way to the aft cabin. The G6500's interior was exactly as expensive as he'd expected. Leather seats that converted to beds, polished wood accents, subtle lighting. He lay down without bothering to convert the seat and was asleep within minutes. He dreamed of flying. Not the smooth, controlled flight of today, but the chaotic nightmare of the crash that killed Jenny, the stick shaking in his hands, the warning alarm screaming, Jenny's voice calm and professional even as they fell from the sky. We're losing hydraulics. I see it. Switching to backup. Backup's not responding. Try manual override. No response. Ethan, we're in trouble. The ground rushing up, the ejection sequence, the explosive bolts firing, his seat rocketing away from the aircraft while Jenny's seat malfunctioned, trapping her in the doomed plane, watching her die while he floated safely to Earth. Ethan woke with a gasp, drenched in sweat. The cabin was dark except for the emergency lighting strips along the floor. Outside, the wind howled. He checked his phone. 5:30 a.m. He'd slept for 3 hours. There were 2 missed calls from Claire and a text. Surgery finished. Mom's in recovery. Stable, but critical. Surgeon says next 24 hours will tell the story. How's the weather? Ethan pulled up the latest forecast and felt his stomach drop. The storm had accelerated again. The outer bands were already over Miami, and the eye would make landfall in less than 6 hours. The airport was officially closed. They were stuck. He called Claire back. She answered immediately. Tell me we can still leave, she said. We can't. Airport's closed. We're here until the storm passes. He heard her breath catch. How long? Best case, 24 hours. Worst case, 48. Depends on the storm's forward speed and how much damage it does to the runway infrastructure. My mother is in the best place she can be. The hospital has backup generators, emergency supplies, trained staff. She'll be safe. And us? The FBO has a reinforced hangar. We'll move the aircraft inside, ride out the storm there. It's not comfortable, but it's safe. I need to stay at the hospital. Claire, my mother just had open-heart surgery. She's 73 years old. I'm not leaving her to ride out a hurricane in an aircraft hangar. Ethan understood, but he didn't like it. The hospital's going to be chaotic. Emergency cases, power outages, all their resources focused on critical patients, which includes my mother. Okay, I'll secure the aircraft and come to the hospital. We'll figure it out from there. You don't have to. Yes, I do. I'm not letting you handle this alone. The gratitude in her voice was palpable. Thank you. Ethan spent the next hour coordinating with the FBO to get the Gulfstream into a hangar and properly secured. The line crew worked with practiced efficiency despite the worsening weather. By 7 a.m., the aircraft was safe, and Ethan was in a taxi heading to Jackson Memorial Hospital. The city was already battening down. Plywood over windows, empty streets, the few people out moving with purpose, getting to shelters or secured locations. The taxi driver, an older man named Carlos, shook his head as he navigated the deserted roads. This is my 4th hurricane, he said. Each one, I tell myself I'm going to leave Florida, and each time I stay. Stupid, maybe. But this is home. Why do you stay? Ethan asked. Because running doesn't solve anything. The storm comes whether you're here or not. At least if you're here, you can help rebuild after. Carlos glanced at Ethan in the rearview mirror. You got family in Miami? No, I'm here with my boss. Her mother just had surgery. Ah, bad timing. You could say that. Well, you picked a hell of a day to be a good employee. The hospital was controlled chaos. Emergency patients streaming in, regular patients being moved to interior rooms, staff preparing for the worst. Ethan found Claire in the surgical intensive care unit waiting room, sitting beside her father. She looked small next to the colonel, who still carried himself with military bearing despite being in his 70s. Colonel Whitmore stood when Ethan approached and extended his hand. Cole, glad you made it. Sir, Ethan shook his hand, noting the firm grip and assessing eyes. The aircraft secure? In a reinforced hangar. Should be fine. Good. The colonel gestured to a chair. Sit. You look like hell. Feel like it too, sir. Claire was staring at the closed door to the ICU. They're only allowing one visitor at a time. Dad just got back. She's awake but weak. The surgery went well, but her heart is still very fragile. Did you tell her about the storm? She knows. She told me to leave, get back to Chicago while I still could. Claire's laugh was bitter. Even drugged and post-surgery, she's trying to protect me. Sounds like good parenting, Ethan said. It is. She's always been good at that. Even when my father and I were at our worst, she was the steady one, the reasonable one. Claire looked at her father. The one who didn't fly off to fight wars and leave his family behind. The colonel absorbed the barb without flinching. I made my choices. I live with them. We all lived with them, Dad. That's the point. Ethan suddenly felt like he was intruding on something private. I can step outside if you two need to. No, both of them said simultaneously. Claire continued, I'm sorry. This isn't the time or place, and you didn't fly through a hurricane to listen to our family drama. Actually, the colonel said, maybe it is the time. We're stuck here for at least a day. Might as well clear the air. There's nothing to clear. You chose the military over us. End of story. I chose to serve my country. There's a difference. Not to an 8-year-old girl who didn't understand why her father was always gone. The colonel was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. You're right. You didn't understand. How could you? You were a child. But I was trying to give you and your mother a better life. Everything I did, every mission I flew, was for you two. We didn't need your missions. We needed you. I know that now. Took me 30 years and a divorce to figure it out, but I know it. Claire turned to face him fully. Then why are you here? Why now? Because your mother called me. 2 days ago, when she found out about the surgery. Asked me to be here in case things didn't go well. She called you? She did. Said regardless of what happened between us, you shouldn't have to face this alone. Said I'd let you down enough times, and this wasn't going to be another one. Tears welled in Claire's eyes. That sounds like something she'd say. It does. The colonel reached out and took his daughter's hand. I'm sorry, Claire, for all of it. For choosing wrong. For not being there. For making you feel like you had to build your entire life around proving you didn't need me. I don't need you. I know, you've made that abundantly clear. You built an empire out of my legacy and made it better than I ever could have. You're brilliant and successful, and you did it all without my help. He squeezed her hand. But maybe you don't have to keep doing it alone. Maybe we can figure out how to be family again, even if it's a broken, complicated version of family. Claire wiped at her eyes. I don't know how to do that. Neither do I, but we've got at least 24 hours stuck in a hurricane. Seems like a good time to start learning. Ethan watched the exchange and felt something shift in his chest. Two people, damaged and stubborn, trying to find their way back to each other. It reminded him of himself and Noah, of the conversations they'd need to have someday about why Dad was just a janitor when he used to be something more. A doctor emerged from the ICU, and they all stood. The doctor, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and exhausted features, addressed Claire directly. Your mother is stable. The surgery was successful, and her vitals are strong, but the next 24 to 48 hours are critical. We're monitoring her closely. Can I see her? Claire asked. Yes, but briefly. She needs rest. The doctor glanced at the windows where the sky had turned an ominous gray-green. I need to be honest with you. With this storm, we're about to go into emergency protocols. All non-critical staff will be sheltering in place, and we'll be focused on maintaining life support systems and treating emergency cases. Your mother will receive excellent care, but I can't guarantee— I understand, Claire interrupted. Just tell me she has the best chance possible. She does. She's a fighter. The surgery team did everything right, and her body is responding well. Now it's just a matter of time and healing. Claire went into the ICU while Ethan and the colonel sat in uncomfortable silence. Finally, the older man spoke. You have a son, I understand. Yes, sir. Noah. He's 7. Single father? My wife died 3 years ago. Cancer. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. How'd you end up scrubbing floors when you could be flying? Ethan had answered this question too many times in the past 24 hours, but something about the colonel's directness, his obvious understanding of loss and guilt, made the truth easier. I was afraid. Afraid that I'd make a mistake and leave Noah without a father. Afraid that if I kept flying, I'd end up like Jenny, dead in a crash that could have been prevented. So I chose the safest, smallest life I could find. And now? Now I'm sitting in a Miami hospital, waiting out a hurricane after flying through conditions that should have killed me. So apparently my plan to stay safe didn't work out so well. The colonel laughed. Life has a way of dragging us back to who we really are, whether we like it or not. Is that what happened to you? Life dragged you back? Something like that. I retired from the military thinking I'd finally have peace, finally be able to relax and enjoy life. Turns out, peace is harder than war. At least in war, you know who the enemy is and what you're fighting for. He leaned back in his chair. I've spent the last 5 years trying to figure out who I am when I'm not a pilot or a commander. Still haven't found a good answer. Maybe there isn't one, Ethan said. Maybe we're always the things we used to be, whether we want to be or not. That's a depressing thought. Or maybe it's freeing. Maybe it means we don't have to keep running from our past. The colonel studied him. You're smarter than your file suggested. My file doesn't know me very well. Clearly. The colonel pulled out his phone and showed Ethan a weather app. Storm's getting close. I should make landfall in about 4 hours. This building is rated for Category 5, but it's still going to get rough. How rough? Windows might blow out. Power will definitely go. Emergency generators will keep critical systems running, but we'll be in the dark for most of it. He put the phone away. I've been through hurricanes before. The noise is the worst part. Like the whole world is trying to tear itself apart. Claire emerged from the ICU, her face drawn but composed. She's sleeping. They've sedated her to keep her calm and reduce strain on her heart. How did she look? The colonel asked. Frail? I've never seen her look so frail. Claire sat down heavily. The doctor said if the surgery had happened 2 weeks later, she might not have survived. So at least there's that. She's strong, the colonel said. Like her daughter. They sat together as the storm approached, 3 people bound by circumstances and choices, waiting for nature to do its worst. Hospital staff moved with practiced efficiency, securing equipment, moving patients, preparing for the chaos to come. At 10:30 a.m., the lights flickered. At 11, the wind began to howl. At 11:45, the first window blew out 2 floors above them, and the building shuddered. Hurricane Raphael had arrived. The next 6 hours were a blur of noise and fear and desperate hope. The hospital descended into emergency protocols. Backup generators kicked in, providing dim lighting to critical areas. The wind outside reached sustained speeds of 150 miles per hour, slamming the building with a force that felt like the hand of an angry god. Ethan, Claire, and the colonel stayed in the ICU waiting room, which was mercifully interior and windowless. Other families huddled there too, waiting for news of their loved ones, united in their fear and helplessness. Claire checked on her mother every hour. Each time the nurses reported the same thing: stable, sedated, holding on. At 3 p.m., the eye passed over. The wind stopped. The silence was eerie, almost worse than the chaos. Ethan went to a window in a nearby corridor and looked out at the devastation. Trees down, roofs torn off, debris everywhere. The ocean was a churning mass of gray water pushing inland, flooding streets. "It's not over," the colonel said, appearing beside him. "The backside of the eye wall hits in about 40 minutes. It'll be just as bad." "I know." "You doing okay?" "Define okay." "Fair point." The colonel stared out at the destruction. "I've seen war zones that looked better than this. How long until we can leave?" "Assuming the airport didn't take major damage? 24 hours, maybe. They'll need to clear debris, inspect the runways, make sure everything's structurally sound. And if it did take major damage? Then we wait longer. Or we drive north and fly out of Fort Lauderdale or West Palm." The colonel turned to face Ethan. "But that's tomorrow's problem. Today's problem is surviving the next 12 hours. The backside of the storm hit at 3:45, just as violent as the front. More windows blew out. More debris slammed into the building. Somewhere above them, people were screaming. Hospital staff ran through corridors, responding to emergencies. In the ICU, machines beeped their steady rhythms, keeping track of hearts that refused to quit. Claire's mother among them, holding on through sheer stubbornness and the skill of the surgical team. At 9 p.m., the wind finally began to die down. By midnight, it was just heavy rain and occasional gusts. Hurricane Raphael had passed, leaving destruction in its wake. Claire was asleep in one of the waiting room chairs, her head on her father's shoulder. The colonel met Ethan's eyes and nodded toward the hallway. They stepped out, leaving Claire to rest. "Thank you," the colonel said quietly. "For getting her here, for staying. You didn't have to do any of this." "Yes, I did," Ethan replied. "I couldn't let her fly into this alone." "Why not? You barely know her." "Because she would have died trying, and I've seen enough death. I didn't need to see any more." The colonel was quiet for a moment. "You're a good man, Cole. Better than you give yourself credit for." "I'm just a father trying to do right by his son. Sometimes that's all any of us can be." They stood in the hallway, 2 men who'd spent their lives flying, now grounded by circumstances beyond their control. Outside, the storm was fading. Inside, hearts kept beating, machines kept beeping, and hope, fragile but persistent, kept them all moving forward. Tomorrow, they'd assess the damage. Tomorrow, they'd figure out how to get home. Tomorrow, Ethan would face the consequences of stepping back into the life he'd abandoned. But tonight, in a Miami hospital at the tail end of a hurricane, he allowed himself to simply be. Not hiding, not running, just present, doing what needed to be done, being who he needed to be. It was, he realized, the first time in 3 years he'd felt like himself. And it terrified him almost as much as it felt like coming home. Dawn broke over Miami with the weak light of a world recovering from violence. Ethan woke in an uncomfortable chair to find Claire already awake, staring at her phone with an expression caught between relief and exhaustion. "My mother's awake," she said without looking up. "Her vitals improved overnight. The doctor says if she maintains this trajectory for another 12 hours, she'll be out of immediate danger." "That's good news." "It is." Claire finally met his eyes. "The airport's conducting damage assessments. Preliminary reports show the runways are intact, but there's debris everywhere. They're saying maybe late afternoon for limited operations. Ethan pulled up the aviation weather on his phone. We'd need to leave by 5 p.m. at the latest to get ahead of the secondary system moving in from the Gulf. Can we do that? Depends on how fast they clear the runways, and whether the Gulf Stream survived the storm without damage. He stood, his back protesting the night spent in a hospital chair. I should get to the FBO, inspect the aircraft, coordinate with the tower. I'll come with you. You should stay with your mother. She's sedated. The next visiting window isn't until noon. Claire gathered her things. And honestly, I need to see the city. Need to understand what we just lived through. The colonel appeared in the doorway, looking surprisingly fresh, despite having slept in the same waiting room. I've arranged a car. Driver knows the safest routes through the debris. Outside, Miami was unrecognizable. Downed power lines snaked across flooded streets. Trees lay toppled like fallen giants. Buildings stood with missing walls, their interiors exposed to the world. Cars were overturned, boats sat in the middle of roads, and everywhere the detritus of shattered lives lay scattered like confetti after a parade gone wrong. Their driver, a hospital security guard named Marcus doing extra work for cash, navigated the destruction with grim expertise. This is the 4th major hurricane I've seen, he said. Each time you think you're prepared. Each time you're not. How long does it usually take to recover? Claire asked. From the physical damage? Months, maybe years depending on insurance and funding. From the trauma? Marcus shook his head. Some people never do. They reached the FBO 40 minutes later. The facility had weathered the storm better than much of the city. The reinforced hangar had held, and the Gulf Stream sat inside, apparently undamaged. But the tarmac outside was littered with debris, and 2 smaller aircraft that had been tied down were now crumpled wrecks. Ethan spent the next 2 hours conducting a thorough inspection of the Gulf Stream. He checked every surface, every system, every potential point of failure. The aircraft had been built to withstand extreme conditions, and it showed. A few minor cosmetic scratches, but structurally sound. Mechanically perfect. We're good to fly? Claire asked when he emerged from the final inspection. We are, assuming the tower clears us for departure. I'll make some calls. She stepped away, phone already to her ear, and Ethan watched her transform back into the CEO he'd first met. Efficient, commanding, used to getting what she wanted. The colonel approached, carrying 2 cups of coffee from the FBO's miraculously functioning cafe. She's impressive when she's in her element. She is, Ethan agreed, accepting the coffee. She gets that from her mother, the drive, the competence. From me, she got the stubbornness and the inability to accept defeat. The colonel sipped his own coffee. Not sure which traits serve her better. Maybe all of them. Maybe that's what makes her who she is. Philosophical for a janitor. Ethan smiled slightly. I'm a lot of things, Colonel. Janitor is just the most recent. And what are you going to be next? It was the question Ethan had been avoiding since they'd landed in Miami 36 hours ago. What came after this? Could he really go back to night shift and invisibility after flying through a hurricane? After remembering what it felt like to be competent, needed, awed? I don't know, he admitted. Ask me again when we're back in Chicago. By 1 p.m., they received clearance for a 5:30 departure. The tower was operating on backup generators and skeleton crew, but the primary runway had been cleared and deemed safe. They'd be among the first aircraft to depart since the storm. Claire wanted to see her mother one more time before they left. They drove back to the hospital through streets that looked slightly less apocalyptic in daylight, though the destruction was no less profound. Rescue crews were out now, power company trucks working on downed lines, neighbors helping neighbors clear debris. In the ICU, Claire's mother was awake and alert, though clearly weak. She smiled when Claire entered, and Ethan stayed back, giving them privacy. Through the glass, he watched Claire hold her mother's hand, watched them talk, watched Claire's composure finally crack as she pressed her forehead against her mother's. The colonel stood beside Ethan, his expression unreadable. That's the first time I've seen Claire cry since she was 16. Since you left? Since I left. The colonel's voice was rough. I told myself I was doing the right thing, serving my country, protecting freedom, all the noble justifications we use to abandon the people who need us most. You came back. 20 years too late. But yes, I came back. He turned to Ethan. Don't make my mistakes, Cole. Don't wait 20 years to be honest with your son about who you are and what you've lost. Kids are stronger than we give them credit for. They can handle the truth. What they can't handle is a father who's only half present because he's too busy hiding from his past. The words hit Ethan like a physical blow. Because the colonel was right. Noah deserved better than a father who was going through the motions, maintaining safety at the cost of authenticity. He deserved to know who Ethan had been, what he'd lost, why he'd chosen the path he'd chosen. He deserved the truth. Claire emerged from the ICU, wiping her eyes. She's stable. The doctor is confident she'll make a full recovery. It'll take time, but she's going to be okay. That's wonderful, Ethan said. She told me to stop hovering and go home. Said Chicago needs me more than she does right now. Claire managed a watery smile. Even post-surgery, she's bossing me around. Sounds like good mothering, the colonel said. They left the hospital at 4 p.m., giving themselves 90 minutes to get to the airport and complete pre-flight. The drive was somber, each of them lost in their own thoughts. The city slowly rebuilding around them was a reminder of resilience, of the human capacity to endure and recover. At the FBO, Ethan went through the pre-flight sequence with renewed focus. This flight would be different from the one that brought them here. No hurricane to outrun, no emergency driving them forward. Just a routine flight home. Except nothing about the past 48 hours had been routine, and Ethan knew he wasn't the same man who'd left Chicago 2 days ago. They departed Miami at 5:45, wheels up into a sky washed clean by the storm. The city spread below them, broken but unbowed, already beginning the long process of healing. Ethan climbed to cruise altitude and engaged the autopilot, then sat back and allowed himself to breathe. Thank you, Claire's voice came through the intercom, for everything, for flying me here, for staying through the storm, for getting us home safely. You already thanked me. I know, but I don't think I really understood what you did until now. You risked your life. You risked never seeing your son again, for me, for someone who'd spent 2 years treating you like you were invisible. Ethan was quiet for a moment. You weren't wrong about me hiding. I was hiding. From grief, from fear, from responsibility. Flying you to Miami forced me to stop hiding. So in a way, I should be thanking you. I don't think that's how this works. Maybe not, but it's true anyway. The flight was smooth, the weather cooperating in a way that felt almost apologetic after the violence of the hurricane. They landed in Chicago at 9:15 p.m., the city lights spread below them like a blanket of stars. Ethan taxied to Whitmore Aviation's hangar and shut down the engines. In the sudden silence, he sat in the cockpit and felt the weight of what came next settling over him. He'd have to face Noah, face Mrs. Patterson, face the reality of his choices. He'd have to decide what happened tomorrow and the day after that, and all the days stretching forward into an uncertain future. Claire appeared in the cockpit doorway. My father wants to talk to you before you leave. He's waiting in the operations center. About what? He didn't say, but knowing him, it's important. Ethan found the colonel in the operations center, standing before the same weather displays where Claire had stood 2 days ago, planning an impossible flight. Cole, good flight? Smooth as glass, sir. Good. The colonel turned to face him. I've been making some calls, talked to some people I know in the aviation industry, people who owe me favors. Sir? There's a company in Colorado, mountain rescue operations, charter flights in extreme conditions. They need a chief pilot, someone with test pilot experience, someone who can handle difficult flying in challenging environments. The colonel pulled out a business card. I recommended you. They're interested. Ethan stared at the card. I don't understand. You're wasted as a janitor, Cole. You're wasted on night shift. You're even wasted as a consultant for Claire's company, though she'll probably offer you that too. The colonel pressed the card into Ethan's hand. You're a pilot, one of the best I've researched, and you belong in the air, not on the ground scrubbing floors. I have a son, I can't just move to Colorado. The position comes with relocation assistance, excellent benefits, and a schedule that's family-friendly. You'd be home more than you are now working nights. The colonel's expression softened. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm giving you an option. What you do with it is your choice. Ethan looked at the card, then at the colonel. Why do you care? Because I see myself in you, a talented pilot running from his past, using the wrong reasons to make the wrong choices. I wasted 20 years of my life on those choices. I don't want to see you do the same. What if I'm not running? What if I'm just protecting my son? Then ask yourself this. Are you protecting him, or are you teaching him to be afraid? Because there's a difference. The question stayed with Ethan as he drove home through the late-night Chicago streets. The business card sat in his pocket, a weight and a promise. The city looked different than it had 2 days ago. Or maybe he looked different. Maybe everything had shifted in ways he was only beginning to understand. Mrs. Patterson answered her door before he could knock, pulling him into a hug that smelled like cookies and kindness. You're home. Thank heavens. Noah's been asking about you constantly. How is he? Asleep now, but you should wake him. He needs to see you're safe. Noah was in the guest bedroom, curled around a stuffed triceratops, his face peaceful in sleep. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed and gently shook his shoulder. Hey, buddy, I'm home. Noah's eyes opened slowly, then widened with recognition. Dad! He launched himself into Ethan's arms with the full-body enthusiasm only a 7-year-old could manage. You were gone forever. I know, I'm sorry. Work emergency. Mrs. Patterson said you had to fly somewhere, in a real plane. The excitement in Noah's voice was palpable. Yeah, I had to fly my boss to Florida. But you're a janitor. And there it was. The moment Ethan had been dreading and avoiding in equal measure. He took a breath. I am a janitor, but I used to be something else. I used to be a pilot. Noah pulled back to look at him, eyes wide. Really? Like an airplane pilot? Really. I flew for the Air Force. Big planes, small planes, test planes that nobody had ever flown before. That's so cool. Why didn't you tell me? Because Ethan struggled to find words a 7-year-old would understand. Because flying was something I did before Mom died, and after she died, it hurt too much to keep doing it, so I stopped. But you flew to Florida? I did. My boss needed help, and I was the only one who could do it. So even though it was scary, even though I hadn't flown in a long time, I did it anyway. Noah was quiet for a moment, processing. Was it scary when you were flying? Very scary. There was a big storm and the wind was really strong, and I wasn't sure we'd make it, but we did. Because you're brave? Because I was more afraid of not helping than I was of the storm. Ethan pulled Noah close again. Sometimes being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about doing the right thing even when you're terrified. Like when I have to go to the dentist. Ethan smiled. Exactly like that. Are you going to be a pilot again? It was the question Ethan had been asking himself for 48 hours. I don't know yet, maybe. Would that be okay with you? Would you still come home? Every single night, I promise. Then it's okay. Noah yawned. Can you tell me about the storm? So Ethan did. He told Noah about the hurricane, about the wind and rain, about landing the plane in conditions that seemed impossible. He simplified it, made it age-appropriate, but he didn't lie. He gave his son the truth and watched Noah's eyes light up with wonder and pride. My dad's a hero, Noah said sleepily. I'm not a hero. I'm just a dad who did what needed to be done. That's what heroes do. Noah fell asleep in Ethan's arms, and Ethan carried him home to their apartment, tucked him into his own bed, and stood in the doorway watching him sleep. The business card the colonel had given him was still in his pocket. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in 3 years, Ethan felt like he could breathe. The next morning, Ethan called Whitmore Aviation and asked to speak with Claire. She picked up on the first ring. Ethan, I was hoping you'd call. I wanted to check on your mother. She's doing well. They're moving her out of ICU this afternoon. Full recovery expected within 6 to 8 weeks. Claire paused. I also wanted to talk to you about your future with the company. Claire, let me finish. I'm offering you the consultant position, $50 an hour, flexible schedule, all the terms we discussed. But I'm also offering you something else. She took a breath. Chief pilot. You'd oversee all our flight operations, train new pilots, conduct technical assessments for clients. It's a full-time position, day shift, competitive salary, full benefits. Ethan was silent. I know it's a lot, Claire continued, and I know you have concerns about visibility, about exposure, about all the things that made you choose night shift in the first place. But Ethan, you're too talented to waste. And after what you did for me, after what you risked, I can't in good conscience let you go back to scrubbing floors. I need to think about it. Of course. Take all the time you need. She paused. But know this. Whatever you decide, I'm grateful. You saved my life. You gave me time with my mother I wouldn't have had. You reminded me that some things are worth risking everything for. I won't forget that. After they hung up, Ethan sat at his kitchen table with 2 business cards in front of him. Colorado Rescue Operations or Chicago Corporate Aviation. Both offered a return to flying. Both offered a chance to stop hiding. Both offered futures that looked nothing like the past 2 years. His phone buzzed. Text from Marcus at the hangar. Saw you flew Miss Whitmore to Miami. That's crazy, man. Also heard she's offering you chief pilot. You should take it. You belong in the cockpit, not on the floor. Another text, this one from Hendricks. Ms. Whitmore briefed me on your potential new role. For what it's worth, I think it's the right move. You've clearly been wasting your talents. And then, surprisingly, a text from an unknown number that turned out to be Captain Rodriguez. Heard about your hurricane flight. That's some impressive flying. If you take the chief pilot job, I'd be honored to work under you. We could use someone with your skills. The messages kept coming. People he barely knew, people he'd worked alongside for 2 years while invisible, all suddenly seeing him, all suddenly acknowledging what he'd been hiding. Ethan looked at the business cards again, then at the photo on his refrigerator. Him and Sarah and infant Noah, taken 7 years ago when the world was different and loss was something that happened to other people. Sarah smiled at him from the photo, frozen in time, forever young and healthy and alive. What would she want him to do? The answer came immediately, in her voice, as clear as if she were standing beside him. Live, Ethan. Stop hiding. Show Noah who his father really is. He picked up his phone and called Claire back. I'm in, he said when she answered. Chief pilot, I accept. The relief in her voice was palpable. Really, you're sure? I'm sure. On one condition. Name it. I want to help train junior pilots. Want to make sure the next generation knows not just how to fly, but how to fly safely, how to make good decisions under pressure, how to protect their crews. Done. Absolutely done. Claire's voice was warm now, excited. When can you start? I need to give proper notice for my current position. 2 weeks? 2 weeks. And Ethan, welcome back. Thanks, Claire, for everything. The 2 weeks passed in a blur of transition. Ethan worked his final night shifts, trained his replacement, and said goodbye to the handful of people who'd shown him kindness during his invisible years. Marcus was thrilled for him. Mrs. Patterson cried happy tears. Noah told everyone at school that his dad was a pilot again, with the unfiltered pride only a 7-year-old could muster. On his first day as chief pilot, Ethan arrived at the hangar at 7 a.m., early, but not unreasonably so. The day shift was already in motion, and for the first time in 2 years, he was part of it. People who'd walked past him for months now stopped to introduce themselves, to congratulate him, to express their excitement about working with him. Claire met him in her office with a coffee and a smile. Ready for your first day? As ready as I'll ever be. Good, because we have 3 clients requesting technical consultations, 2 new pilots who need certification training, and a bombardier that's making a weird noise Rodriguez can't diagnose. She handed him a schedule. Welcome to the chaos. Ethan looked at the packed schedule and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Anticipation. Not fear, not dread. Just the simple pleasure of having challenging work ahead and the skills to meet it. Over the next 3 months, Ethan rebuilt his life from the ground up. He moved to day shift permanently, adjusted his schedule so he could pick Noah up from school most days, and slowly, carefully, began to trust himself in the cockpit again. The fear never completely disappeared. He suspected it never would, but it became manageable, a reminder to stay sharp rather than a barrier to moving forward. He flew charter flights for Whitmore Aviation's clients, each one adding to his confidence. He trained new pilots, passing on everything he'd learned in his Air Force days and the hard lessons he'd learned from loss. He consulted on aircraft purchases, giving honest assessments that saved clients millions and built Whitmore Aviation's reputation for integrity. And he talked to Noah. Really talked. About Sarah, about Jenny, about the crash and the grief and the years of hiding. Noah listened with the seriousness of a child trying to understand adult problems, and while he couldn't grasp all of it, he understood enough. Understood that his father had been hurt and was healing. Understood that being brave meant doing hard things. Understood that they were in this together. Claire and Ethan developed a friendship built on mutual respect and shared trauma. She never forgot what he'd risked to fly her to Miami, and he never forgot that she'd given him the push he needed to stop hiding. They had dinner occasionally, professional at first, then more personal, as they discovered they enjoyed each other's company beyond the cockpit and boardroom.
"Are you dating my boss?" Noah asked one evening when Claire had joined them for pizza. "No," Ethan said, even as Claire raised an eyebrow. "We're friends. Friends who eat pizza together a lot," Noah observed with the blunt honesty of childhood. "Friends can eat pizza together," Claire said, but she was smiling. "I guess," Noah said, apparently satisfied. "She's nice, for a boss." "Thank you, Noah. I think." The Colonel became an unexpected presence in their lives. He visited Chicago twice, ostensibly to check on Claire's mother's recovery, but he always made time to visit the hangar, to fly with Ethan, to share war stories and wisdom. He and Claire were rebuilding their relationship slowly, learning to be family again after decades of distance. "You did good, Cole," the Colonel said during his second visit, watching Ethan run a training exercise with a junior pilot. "You found your way back." "With a lot of help. The best pilots always have help."
It's the ones who think they can do it alone who crash. The Colonel clapped him on the shoulder. Your co-pilot would be proud. Your wife would be proud. Hell, I'm proud, and I barely know you. 6 months after the Miami flight, on a cold Chicago morning in April, Ethan received a letter. It was forwarded from his old address, postmarked 3 years earlier, and it was in Sarah's handwriting. His hand shook as he opened it. "My dearest Ethan," it began, "if you're reading this, I'm gone. And you're probably still grieving, still lost, still trying to figure out how to be both mother and father to Noah. I'm sorry I can't be there to help. I'm sorry for all the things I'll miss. But I need you to know something. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. You and Noah. Our family. The life we built together. Don't let my death destroy that. Don't let fear steal the rest of your life. I fell in love with a pilot who could do impossible things, who faced challenges with courage and grace. That man is still in there. Let him fly again. Let him live again. Let him show Noah what it means to be brave. I love you. I will always love you. Live for both of us now. Live fully. Live fearlessly. Live. All my love, Sarah." Ethan sat at his kitchen table and cried, finally letting out 3 years of grief he'd been holding back. Noah found him there and climbed into his lap without a word, just holding on while his father shook with sobs. "I miss her too," Noah whispered. "I know, buddy. I know. But she'd be happy you're flying again, right?" "Yeah, she would be." "Then it's okay to be sad and happy at the same time?" Ethan held his son close. "Yeah, it is." That afternoon, Ethan took Noah up for his first flight. Not as a passenger in the cabin, but in the cockpit, sitting in the right seat with a headset that was too big and eyes that were full of wonder. They flew over Chicago, over the neighborhoods and parks and streets that made up their world, and Ethan pointed out landmarks while Noah peppered him with questions. "Can we go higher?" "We can." "Can we go faster?" "We can." "Can we do this again?" "As many times as you want." When they landed, Noah was practically vibrating with excitement. "That was the best thing ever. Can I be a pilot when I grow up?" "You can be anything you want to be," Ethan said. "Pilot, paleontologist, doctor, teacher, anything. But whatever you choose, I want you to choose it because it makes you happy. Not because you're running from something, and not because you're trying to be someone you're not. I want to be like you, Noah said simply. Then be brave. Be honest. Be kind. That's all I could ever ask. 1 year after the Miami flight, Whitmore Aviation had its most successful year on record. Claire attributed much of it to Ethan's influence. The technical consultations that built client trust, the training program that produced exceptional pilots, the reputation for safety and excellence that came from having someone who genuinely cared about doing things right. We should celebrate, Claire said, reviewing the year-end financials in her office. How? Dinner, somewhere nice, you, me, and Noah. My treat. Sounds like a date. Does it? She smiled. Maybe it is. They'd been dancing around the possibility for months now, their friendship edging slowly towards something more. Both of them damaged, both of them rebuilding, both of them cautious about risking their carefully reconstructed lives. I'd like that, Ethan said. We'd like that. The dinner was perfect. Noah charmed Claire with dinosaur facts and asked if she wanted to come to his science fair. Claire told stories about her mother's recovery and her improving relationship with her father. Ethan watched them interact and felt something he'd thought was lost forever. The possibility of family, of love, of futures that included more than just survival. On the drive home, Noah fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from excitement. Claire sat beside Ethan in the front, and they drove through the Chicago night in comfortable silence. Thank you, she said finally. For what? For taking a chance. On flying again, on this job, on... She gestured vaguely. Whatever this is becoming. You took a chance on me first. You saw something in a janitor that most people would have missed. I saw a man hiding from himself. Took a hurricane to get you to stop hiding. Took the right push from the right person. Claire reached over and took his hand. We're good at pushing each other. We are. They sat at a traffic light, hands intertwined, and Ethan thought about the journey that had brought him here. From the crash that killed Jenny to the cancer that took Sarah. From hiding in plain sight to flying through hurricanes. From janitor to chief pilot. From broken to healing. The light turned green, and Ethan drove forward into the rest of his life. Sarah's letter in his pocket, his son asleep in the back seat, and the woman who'd forced him to remember who he was sitting beside him. He was flying again, not just in aircraft, but in life. Moving forward instead of hiding, embracing possibility instead of fearing loss, being honest with himself and his son about who he'd been, who he'd lost, and who he was becoming. The past would always be there, carried in his heart like cargo he couldn't unload. Jenny's face in the moment before the crash, Sarah's smile in better days, the weight of grief that never fully disappeared. But it didn't have to define him anymore. He could be a father and a pilot, could honor the dead while living for the living, could be afraid and brave simultaneously, could be broken and whole at the same time. The sky was still there, waiting. And Ethan Cole was ready to fly, not running from his past anymore, not hiding from his fears, just moving forward, one flight at a time, one day at a time, one moment at a time, finally, completely, courageously alive.